looking at seeing some of the great running backs and the other Ohio State players talk about him, Mo Claret saying this kid's gonna scoop us all before he's done, and you can see it. That kid's just beginning.
Oh, yeah, he was just dynamite. He was really the engine that drove everything for Ohio State last night. And the best thing he did was he made it so Cardale Jones didn't have to put it all on himself. He didn't have to match Mariota's, pass for pass. Because, Jones had a pretty decent game. Not a great game from a statistical standpoint. I think his rating was only like a 58 or so. But he didn't have to because, Ezekiel was doing it on the ground, and the way he was, cutting and he really had that sort of Earl Campbell / Kevin Max type quality to just not go down on the first contact, to bounce off people, to keep going. And he was just rumbling through guys. He would go through piles and he'd come out on the other side. So, and the fact that he could do that now as just a sophomore, Ohio State has a lot more of good stuff to see from Ezekiel Elliott, no matter who the quarterback is next year. And the offensive line, you got to give them credit too. They really did a super job of springing some holes open for Elliott.
And you know what? You could see them adjusting throughout the game too, because early on, I kind of talked. That's kind of into what I was saying about the way the game played early on. Oregon came with it, and it took a minute for the Buckeyes to adjust. They were getting through that offensive line a bit. They were getting back there for much of the first half. They were rushing things a little bit, but as you said, good job not only to continue to pound and continue to wear them down, but good job of adjusting throughout the game by the offensive line as they continued to pick up the different rush. And then, too, that was a bit confusing, too, because then you see a lot of three-man rushes in the second half, and you're like, man, I don't know. But regardless, either way, the way it played out, Ohio State just got stronger and stronger and continued to pound down in the second half.
That's right. It really worked out well, and that's the way that they were able to beat Oregon, was to be able to get those long, sustained drives and to keep Mariota off the field. So he's not going to be able to put up those 50 points when you're controlling the ball, you're controlling the clock, you're limiting his opportunities. And that's, I know a great running game doesn't always beat a great passing game, but it certainly helps. If you are going up against a devastating passing game, the best thing you can do is to get the run established, and that's exactly what Ohio State did, just be able to run the ball that effectively, and it really took Oregon out of their element where they just love to throw the ball up and down the field. They just weren't able to do it.
For sure. I love to give credit, and it's escaping me who tweeted it. Somebody on my timeline last night tweeted, this is Big Ten football 60 years in the making. But it is. It's the combination now of the speed at the skill positions, of the spread offense, of the modern game, the SEC speed, whatever you want to say, combined last night with the smash mouth. It was like last week when I was talking to BSK, and for so long he's been anti-Urban Meyer, and he doesn't like that style of play, and it's not Ohio State Buckeyes. Well, the last few weeks, all of a sudden, BSK has been fired up, and this is Buckeye football that I love because it's smash mouth, because it's physical, because this team, man, and I don't know who saw it coming. I think a lot of people saw it coming next year is what I mean, but they combined that combination of being both a tough, gritty, in the trenches, physical team, as well as one that can go out there and do the track meet thing and put 50 points on the board and go up and down the field if you want to play that game too.
That's right. It's amazing how the narrative has changed just from just a few years ago. People were saying Ohio State didn't have the athleticism and didn't have the speed to deal with teams like Alabama and other SEC type of teams. But, just the fact that they were able to get faster and, of course, always get stronger, but then be able to combine that with the traditional Ohio State style of just through the years with Archie Griffin and Keith Byers and Eddie George, and, you're going to throw Ezekiel Elliott in there with really good running backs that keep things moving on offense. And, it wasn't just 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It was a lot more than 3 yards, but that's how Ohio State won the game. And it was nice to see them not only win the championship, but really to win it their way.
Absolutely. You're listening to the Sports Fix. J-Rock, Jeff Gorman talking here. Matter of fact, I'm trying to get the total here. I believe this season, isn't it the second highest rushing total in Buckeyes history here was Elliott? I'm not positive on that one, but I thought I saw that one here in my research for that. But he broke the record, the Buckeyes record for rushing in a bowl game here for the national championship game as well. Really, not enough superlatives can be put out there for the physical, imposing rushing attack that the Buckeyes dropped on the Oregon Ducks.
That's right. And, another unsung hero of the game was the Buckeyes defense, to be able to hold
Huge.
Oregon to just 20 points. I mean, they average about 48 points, and they were able to, it's not that Mariota didn't have a great game. I mean, he threw for 339 yards, but, they were able to stop him when it counted. On that 4th and goal, they stopped him, and then a couple times they stopped him in the red zone, and the Ducks had to kick a field goal. So that's 21 points that could have been put on the board that ended up being just 6, and that really, turned the tide of the game. The fact that Oregon wasn't able to just ring those big numbers up there, and, Ohio State, was able to kind of to buckle down in the red zone at least those 3 times, and that really helped them again when the offense was turning the ball over a few times, and the defense still was able to bail them out several times.
Yeah, Ohio State defense came up. Talk a little bit. We brought up Mariota and haven't gotten into a lot of that. What are your thoughts? I'll be the first one. I will say this. Watching yesterday, by the end of the game, I looked over at Jerry and I said, hey, man, I know you probably heard me say this about a year ago this time, but I don't know about the NFL prospects of this guy. We basically had the conversation that we had about, who a year ago. Manziel. But anyways,
right.
Hey, here's the thing. I'm not trying to one game say, oh man, because I liked Mariota. I liked a lot of what I saw him do throughout his career. But it's not just one game against one opponent and the result, but it's the style of football. And I think that the style of defense that the Oregon faced last night, not an NFL defense, obviously. No college level is the same as the NFL, but close as far as the physicality, the difference between that and some of the other. You saw a difference. Now, granted, hey, there was some dropped passes. Remember, there was the one wide open. The guy on 3rd down just dropped it off of his hands when they found a seam in the defense there. And there was another one a little bit later that also, obviously, that stuff comebacks to bite you. But, I'm not saying that there's just no way that this kid's good. But a lot of the same question marks that I have about John Manziel last year, I have about Marcus Mariota coming out of this season, especially coming out of that performance. Not that, like I said, he was terrible, but he was not the same, and it just showed me that, I don't know. It definitely made me change as far as going, hey, man, this guy is way different than, say this guy, that guy, Manziel, different guys like that, because I saw too many similarities and not enough differences, especially when you compared it to what you saw on the other side of the field. I'm not saying that the guy can't be an NFL quarterback, but I clearly saw something that would give me a lot of pause if I was an NFL scouting person.
Right, because you're expecting him to I'm sure a lot of those scouts who were watching Mariota were expecting Oregon to win the game, expecting Mariota to have a big day, pretty much his typical day, but of course they didn't see that. So it's kind of too bad for him that he wasn't able to sort of punctuate his college career with that same kind of big money, huge numbers performance that he put up throughout the year. And of course it makes you, when you're up against a strong defense like Ohio State and the way they're able to, not necessarily shut him down, but be able to slow him down, it makes you think about his spot in the draft. And, like we were just talking about how, quarterbacks always seem to kind of rise toward the top not just because it's such an important position, but because people, NFL teams need a good quarterback so often, and they're chasing that brass ring of a franchise quarterback. And coming out of yesterday, you could see that, Mariota, while not, like you said, he wasn't really terrible, but he doesn't have that aura of like a consensus number one Andrew Luck type of top of the draft kind of guy.
My Lord, no, I got more of that coming off of the exuding off of Cardale Jones and that's the thing, is it's not just the stats or what they did. At no point did it feel to me like Mariota was grabbing his team up by the bootstraps, by the collar, and pulling them, again. And I'm just saying that was an aspect that I did not know if he had or not. And obviously I got my answer there. It has nothing to do with the physical tools and the size, although there's question marks there too. But I saw things that made me go, okay, definitely, in that same camp. Not saying I wouldn't draft this guy, but I wouldn't draft this guy up near the top part of the draft. That's absolutely for sure. But I can see that coming. You know, obviously we know firsthand how the hype goes with that. But I was just curious what you thought about that as well, because when he was taken out of his rhythm, when the play action wasn't there, when things fell apart for him, I didn't see a guy that the opposite. Cardale, say what you want. Maybe it's the physical stature because he is a man in a man's body, but when Ohio State needed a big throw, he just made it. He didn't even step into it. I think that's what I love, a big arm. And you know, I don't know why I didn't fall in love with Brandon Weeden like everybody else, but I guess I love a big arm when he's throwing to wide receivers, not clay pigeons. But man, I mean, that kid just flicks the wrist and the ball flies. I mean, flies like a missile. Doesn't step into it, doesn't have to put any body behind it, and it just goes, man. But it seemed like he was doing what I was expecting to see on the Oregon side of the field. He was the quarterback that anytime his team needed a play, he made it.
Right. I mean, that's what makes it so scary as to how good he could possibly be. You know, again, with so little experience and, you know, all that physical acumen and the great, like you said, the great touch and power on those passes, you know, being able to show that leadership. And you can imagine after a couple of years, once he just gets just some more experience, how good he could possibly be. And he looks like he could be, maybe not next year, but maybe could definitely be one of those potential franchise quarterbacks. And it's going to be funny how we're always going to think back to him being the third stringer who made good, whereas he could end up being, you know, one of the real big quarterbacks physically and, you know, on the field in the NFL someday.
I got to tell you, what's that, the old adage, the best days, the good old days are happening right now, and you just don't realize it until later because these are the days that you look back on. The good old days happened in the last month and a half for Cardale Jones, and I don't know, you will really have to try. You'll be a lucky young man if you can exceed the last few months of football that you've had, because seriously, kid, not many people go through the run that he did. I mean, 3 huge games where he was the center of the focus. Can he take it? Can he do it? Blah, blah, blah. And he said, you know, Zeke walked up to him and said, hey, kid, relax. Get on my back and I'll carry you through. And they did. But again, I saw some of those qualities. I was curious where you were there with Mariota and his performance yesterday, man. And both of these teams, regardless, obviously, well, I can't say regardless because depending on who comes back, who doesn't come back, that changes things. But obviously the Buckeyes, could you see Oregon, another run coming right back around? Obviously what happens at quarterback would go a long way into that as well. But could you see both of these teams at least being back in the playoff conversation here same time next year?
I'm not so sure about Oregon. I'm not saying that Mariota was really everything for them, but, you know, he was definitely the clear class of that team. And I think it's going to take really another pretty special quarterback to get them where you want to go, because, you know, that whole system of Oregon is predicated on having an outstanding quarterback, and you just can't always find one, and sometimes even the one you have gets hurt. So it would be kind of a surprise if without Mariota they could put it back together and make it all the way to the top 4 to the championship next year. Ohio State, of course, have a lot more confidence in considering how young everybody is, how many people they have coming back, and, you know, I'm not saying Ohio State's definitely going to win it all, or, you know, but they're definitely going to be in the conversation for the next 4 or 5 years. They're always going to be a serious playoff contender because they are just completely loaded. Like you said, they weren't expected to be at this level until next year, and they won it all last night.
Yeah, embarrassment of riches, as you said, you know, and they continue to improve upon that. It's going to be interesting. Talking, too, about coming back next year, assuming, of course, that I'm wrong about the Cardale Jones thing, man. I would think that you're looking at perhaps 2 of the top 3 or 4 Heisman Trophy candidates next year as well in Jones and Elliott there. No doubt Elliott at the top of they should have just gave him the trophy last night. They should have said, you know what, it's already 2015. We're just going to go ahead and spot you this from now. You can bring it back to us at the ceremony because he's coming for it. He's coming for it, my man.
It would be pretty amazing to have a couple of Heisman Trophy candidates on the same team. It's very rare that you see something like that. And of course, if that were the case, you got to give the nod to Elliott simply for the way the team, performed last night and how it really is a good idea to have the run set up the pass. And, if they can keep running the ball like that, if they were able to run the ball like that against, Alabama and Oregon, I think they should do fine against the people on their schedule, throughout the year. I think that, as long as Elliott stays healthy, and again, who knows who they have, backing up, probably some very good talent as well. I think that he's going to be a pretty good candidate. If he stays healthy, he should definitely be a Heisman candidate because, again, he was really rolling up the yards last night and showing that he has the ability, just as a running back,